I've been on the carnivore diet for over 18 months now, and it's changed my life. But if I'd have known many of these things earlier, I would have seen results much faster. So in this video, I'm sharing 17 essential carnivore tips so you can maximize your results as fast as possible. My first tip, which is going to be an incredibly controversial one, is that it can't not work. Every single characteristic that humans have signals to us that we are carnivores. We have the highly acidic stomach, we have short intestines, we have a gallbladder. Even when we look at our fossils before we started agriculture, humans were the most carnivorous species on the planet. If you do carnivore for long enough, it can't not work because it is our species appropriate diet. It is the proper human diet. If you've been on carnivore for a while and it doesn't seem to be working for you, I suspect you're making another one of the mistakes which I'll discuss in this video. One of the most common questions I get is how often should I eat? And the answer to this question is, if you're not hungry, you don't need to eat. One of the greatest things about carnivore is that it reverts your hunger signaling to how it's meant to be. The addition of carbohydrates into the diet of humans has caused a number of problems. For one, whenever we eat carbohydrates, we get massive blood sugar spikes, which causes these massive crashes. It drops below its baseline, our body thinks we'll run out of body fat, and we get ridiculously hungry. Carbohydrates, because they raise another hormone called insulin, also block the hormone called leptin, which is the hormone that says to our brain, hey, we're full, we can stop eating. When you switch to the proper human diet, your hunger signaling sorts itself out. Now, what a lot of people do is they hear many long-term carnivores eat only 1 or 2 meals a day, and they try to replicate that at the start. However, there's a key difference between people who have been on carnivore for a long time and people who have just started, and that is that you're fat adapted. Essentially, how this works is when your body is used to running on carbohydrates, it is not very effective at tapping into its own body fat once it's run out of these carbohydrates because they have very different structures. However, after you've eaten a diet high in fats without carbohydrates for a long time, because the fats that you consume and your body fat have very similar structures, you become what is known as fat adapted, and you essentially never get hungry. So people will go on carnivore, they'll try eat once or twice a day, but they're not fat adapted. Their body is not very efficient yet at tapping into its own fat. So you just end up being very hungry all day and having poor energy levels. At the start, when you first start carnivore, when you're hungry, eat. Don't try to force fasting, and once you start to become more and more fat adapted, you'll find that your hunger naturally subsides. Another thing that happens to some people when they first start carnivore is that they get ridiculously hungry. This is particularly prevalent in people that have not consumed a lot of meat previously. Because meat is the most nutrient-dense food on the planet, and because it contains many nutrients that you literally cannot get from plants, what happens is people will start carnivore, their body gets this taste of meat and all the nutrients it provides, and it goes, whoa, give me more of this stuff. And so in an attempt to top all your nutrient levels back up, you get ridiculously hungry for a couple of weeks. So my key takeaway is just to eat when you're hungry and let your hunger signaling sort itself out. A key mistake that a lot of people make is they go, I've been on carnivore for a while, but the scale's not budging. Here's the thing, the scale could be lying to you. We've all been led down the path that the scales is the only measurement for progression. But on carnivore, your hormones regulate, your inflammation disappears, which makes it significantly easier for you to build muscle. Now, muscle is incredibly dense. It's a lot more dense than fat, in fact. So for a lot of people, they'll gain 2-3 kilos of muscle pretty quickly, but their weight stays the same, and they think that they're not losing fat, when in reality, they've just recomped. They now have 2-3 kilos less fat and 2-3 kilos more muscle. So don't get disheartened if the weight is not moving. Now, a key mistake that I see so many people making is that they have some minor slip up. Say they're going out with friends and there's no meat on the menu. They get something else, which sends them down a spiral. They go completely off track. We've all been there. These foods are designed by teams of scientists to give your brain as much pleasure as possible. And because the human psyche is wired in a way where it's constantly trying to seek pleasure, the brain tries to trick you into getting more of this pleasure. It sends you thoughts like, you know what, we've already slipped off now, let's just have a cheat day today, we'll get back on it tomorrow. Let's just make this a cheat week, we'll get back on it next week. It does whatever it can to get you to consume more of this stuff. As David Goggins says, your mind knows all of your weaknesses. It has the technical advantage over you. You can't let these thoughts beat you. Don't let a slip end up being a fall from a cliff. If you have a minor slip up, that's okay. Chances are, unless you have some serious autoimmune condition, it won't have too much of an effect on you. However, if you let the small cheat meal turn to a cheat day and turn to a cheat week, it's going to seriously hinder your results and set you way back. Now, whether you've slipped off or you're just starting out, one thing that is super essential is to commit for at least 30 days. The biggest mistake I see with people who are just starting out on carnivore is they don't give it long enough. When you first start carnivore, your body's going through a number of changes. For one, your body's running on a completely different fuel. Most people, their entire lives, they've run on carbohydrates. Now they're running on fats. Your entire gut microbiome, which is centered around what you eat, that has to change. When you first enter a low carbohydrate state, your electrolyte levels are messed around a bit. There are so many changes your body's going through. So there's a number of people that go on carnivore for a week. They don't feel incredible and they go, carnivore's not for me. Like I said at the start, the proper human diet is for everyone. You just need to give it time. When people hear that my entire diet is meat and eggs, they often say to me, how do you do that? I could never have the discipline to do that. Which is where this concept of temporary discipline comes in. When you first start carnivore, you have all these cravings for other foods. However, what happens is after a couple of weeks, your brain forgets how much pleasure it got from these things. It literally can't remember how nice they were, and you stop craving them. Now, because your taste buds aren't destroyed from all these ultra-processed foods, which are manufactured to be super sweet, to be super salty, they revert back to their natural state, and the meat starts tasting better and better by the meal. I always say it, but the best meal I had was the last meal I had. Genuinely, every steak starts tasting better and better. And what's crazy is when you do go back to eating this ultra-processed food, it just tastes like chemicals. Everyone thinks I'm super disciplined, when in reality, I'm eating my favorite food for every single meal. I used to be addicted to this stuff. Now I have no desire to consume it ever. The next tip is to eat your favorite meat. A lot of people see all the carnivore influencers online, eating lots of ribeyes, eating lots of ground beef. But in reality, on carnivore, you can eat whatever meats you like. The most essential thing to sticking to any diet is to enjoy what you eat. So if you really enjoy chicken, if you really enjoy pork, if you really enjoy bacon, have that. One thing I will say, however, is that you should look to get in at least a decent amount of ruminant meat. This includes meats such as beef and lamb, and what makes ruminant meat so incredible is that ruminant animals have an incredibly complex digestive system, which allows them to absorb more of the nutrients from the foods they're consuming. Like I said, eat whatever meats you like, but try to consume ruminant meat at least once per day. One very overlooked factor when it comes to your long-term success on the carnivore diet is having a strong why. Every single thing we do in life, we do because we want to do it. Now, when I say this, people go, well, I didn't want to go to the gym last night. Yes, you did. You wanted to feel accomplished with yourself more than you want to sit on the couch and watch Netflix all night. So even though you think you didn't want to go, the reality is deep down you actually did, which is why you went. All of our actions at life are constantly being swayed by two forces. Sure, you want the cookie now. Sure, it looks good. Sure, it smells amazing. But if every time you looked at that cookie, you remembered exactly what your why was. You remembered, I don't want these chronic diseases. I don't want to have low energy. I want to look and feel the best I possibly can be. All of a sudden, this cookie that you once wanted, it now seems a lot less appealing. When you have a real strong why, when you have a real strong goal, and you constantly think about this, you write it down somewhere, it will make it considerably easier for you to stick to carnivore, as the cookie, the cake, the ice cream, it becomes a lot less tempting. Now, another underrated trick for motivation is to watch YouTube videos on the carnivore diet. When you watch videos of people constantly talking up the carnivore diet, sharing how it changed their life, it gives you the strong sense of belief that you know what you're doing is right and you're much more likely to stay on track. Now, something that works even better than YouTube videos is to tell someone else you're going to do it. There's a great book by Robert Cialdini called The 7 Factors of Influence, where he essentially breaks down the key reasons that humans act. And one of the key reasons is this idea of being seen as consistent. Humans hate to be seen as someone that does not stick to their word. Think about how painful it is to say to someone, hey, sorry, I know I said I'd be here, but now I can't. The same goes with diets. If you say to someone, I'm starting this diet, and 2 weeks later when you see them and they ask how it's going, you say, oh no, I'm not doing it anymore. It is incredibly painful. So if you plan to start the carnivore diet, you want to commit for 30 days, there is a much higher likelihood that you'll stick to it if you tell someone, or even better, if you get someone to do it. Because we are so influenced by the actions of the people around us, by having someone do the exact same thing as you are much more likely to stick to it. We've all heard the saying, you are the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. And sticking to the proper human diet is no exception to this. For me personally, my first 6 months on carnivore, I was a little bit slack. I'd go out and I'd go, oh, you know what? Just this one time I'll eat something else. I found it considerably harder to stay 100% strict because the people around me weren't doing it. However, one day my best mate, he decided to start carnivore too. And from that day onwards, we've both stayed completely strict on it. Neither of us eat anything else because it's just normal. That's what we do. When we're hungry, we eat meat and eggs. We don't eat anything else. The next tip is to always just remember the 3 fundamentals of a carnivore diet, which is fatty meat, salt, and water. The carnivore diet is incredibly simple. It's incredibly straightforward. If you don't feel super energized, chances are you need to up the fat or you need to up the salt. Don't stress yourself out. Literally, all you need to do is get hungry, cook up some meat, put some salt on it, and you're sweet. One thing I see a lot of people have with the carnivore diet is this terrible perspective. They get discouraged because they see all these foods that they can't eat. But the reality about many of these things, which are classified as foods, is that they are quite literally just a combination of ingredients, many of which are lab-made chemicals combined together to taste good. On Carnivore, you get to eat the real foods, the greatest foods on the planet, for every single meal. Instead of thinking about all the garbage you can no longer eat, you should be seeing it as, I get to eat the greatest food on the planet every single meal. It makes me feel amazing. I look better. Every single aspect of my life is going to improve. This is incredible. My next tip is to learn at least the basic mechanisms of carnivore. The truth is, most people get their nutrition advice from news headlines. They actually have no idea. Their first thing is going to be, well, what about cholesterol? But if you understand everything and you're able to say to them, well, did you know that the first heart attack in the United States wasn't actually recorded until the year 1912? Heart disease, which did not exist as we know it in the year 1900, by the 1930s was the leading killer in the United States. Now, processed food, that was introduced in the year 1905, but red meat, we've always eaten that. So can you tell me how high cholesterol is the cause of heart attacks when we've eaten red meat forever? And then when they go, well, what about fiber? And you say to them, well, we actually can't break down fiber. Other species like gorillas, they ferment this fiber and turn to short-chain fatty acids. But for humans, all it does is bind to nutrients, damage our gut, and we literally cannot absorb it. When you have an answer for everything, these people soon stop grilling you on it because simply they have no idea what to say. Their news headline didn't tell them this. When you're constantly being attacked from all angles regarding your dietary choices, it can make it much harder to stick to. So by understanding at least the basic mechanisms of carnivore and understanding the basic arguments, you're putting yourself in great stead. The next thing actually relates to this, and that is don't listen to anyone's opinion. The average person has no idea about nutrition. Even medical professionals, most of them have no idea about nutrition. The average doctor has about 4 lectures on nutrition throughout their entire degree. It always makes me laugh. These people are like, what, you're on the carnivore diet? You're only eating whole foods? That must be terrible for you. And then they'll stop and get a double bacon cheeseburger on their way home. It makes no fundamental sense. Like I just discussed, the first heart attack wasn't until the year 1912. Heart disease is a new thing. Cancer rates have gone from 6% to nearly 1 in 2 people getting it in recent years. We've eaten red meat forever. It is fundamentally impossible for all of these modern illnesses to be caused by the one food we've always eaten. So ignore all the other garbage. These people, they just don't know what they're talking about. It's not their fault because chances are they do want what's best for you. They're just simply misinformed. And the final tip is to remind yourself that this is your journey. Sure, you're going down a different path to most people, but look at the other path. The vast majority of people, they're sick, they're depressed, they're overweight. The path you're going down, maybe it's a little bit more uncharted. You don't know exactly what's down there, but you can see exactly what you're heading towards down the other path. This is your journey. The fact that you've decided to go down the other path and optimize your health makes you a rare individual. Stick with it and you'll reap the rewards. In this video, I've broken down 17 key tips to be successful on carnivore, but in this video, I break down 10 of the most common mistakes that I see people make. Subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you all next time.